have two fantastic men here.
Good morning.
Matteo, Penzo, you're an entrepreneur, and you're an executive in technology practice, Frog, a fantastic global design and strategy consultancy. You have 18 years of experience in tech, and you worked with brands around the world, and you also have a couple of startups. Welcome, Matteo.
Buongiorno. Buongiorno a tutti.
Tim Colby, another fantastic man on stage. Thanks a lot for coming. You are a founder of the award-winning company 8 Inc. So you do design, you do innovation, and you have now 12 offices around the world, with the recent one opened in Dubai last year.
That's right.
And you had a very long-lasting relationship with Steve Jobs, and you built fantastic retail stores for him. That's a great achievement. And you're also a trustee at Art Center College of Design, and currently serving as the chairman of the Academic Affairs Committee. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Great. So we have two experts in innovation and in creating fantastic experiences, one from more technology perspective, and Tim is more from the retail and architectural perspective. So hopefully we'll have a very productive discussion today about how to create these experiences, how to make sure we understand our customers, and how can we create great products for them. So the first question I have today is about Dubai. We're in this fantastic city, and apparently it will be one of the few smart cities, according to KPMG. What does smart city mean for businesses? How can people here, how can we use it? What's the future?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about smart cities is that you can bring the software perspective to the physical space. So I think smart cities should be seen as platforms, as SDKs, to build up new services. And this is an amazing space to be in. This is an amazing moment to be alive, because it's where you can create software that advance the human experience of citizens, not just of users.
Very good. Tim?
Yeah, I think, the idea of being smarter is making things better for people. It doesn't mean we use more technology necessarily, it just means we use it in a smarter way, a better way. Certainly having ways of getting feedback from experiences that people have and being able to improve that has to be a part of it. I think, the projections are great from a standpoint of new products and development and business and things like that. But we have to always keep in mind that we're looking at improving the world around us, rather than just saturating us with more technology.
Good. So you're basically both saying that you need to really understand who you're building it for and create the better and smarter experience for them. It's great advice. I have a controversial question for you. Is retail dead? You obviously, main part of your business is creating these fantastic retail stores that you do. And you do a lot of innovation and technology. So will everything go online? And let's take banks, for example. Do they even need branches, or everything can be done online now?
I think, the first answer is retail dead. I'd say no. We still enjoy engaging with other people as human beings. That doesn't go away. I think transactions are easier. That's something where what we used to know as retail may be dead. But I think that stores have the opportunity of becoming something different in terms of how they fit into our lives. You no longer need square footage that's equivalent to your inventory. Now your inventory can be infinite. And so then what are those spaces? Those spaces then can start to become much more social oriented and much more expressions of a meaningful connection to the brand.
I think that the death of retail, it's already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. And this is because we're facing a new generation, that the generation of millennials that is already outspending baby boomers in terms of capacity in stores, and they're enjoying the online experience. So I see the retail experience as a complementary experience to the online, to the digital space. And the real challenge for people like us is, how do we how do we bring the digital to the physical space? How can we enhance the physical experience by the digital means? If you think of what is being commoditized today, if you think of your Facebook timeline, it's extremely personalized to you and your needs and your thoughts too, right? If you think of your Amazon bookstore, it's completely personalized to you. But it's something we have commoditized in the recent years, right? And this has to happen also in the physical stores. If I'm going to buy a car or if I'm going to buy a suit, I want to be called by my name, even if it's the first time I'm popping up at the store. I want them to know my taste is. I want, maybe I even want the store to play my Spotify music when I'm there. I want the personalization being brought to the extreme also when I'm far away from a mobile device or my computer.
I think we get caught up in a physical digital polarity. There's not one person in this room who isn't here physically, but they're also here digitally. So in a way, it's kind of an old idea to be even talking about it as a polar type of condition. They coexist today. And so what you're focusing on is what is the human experience you're having. That's the key. And sometimes digital things enable that. Sometimes physical things enable that.
Well, I think, isn't it true that with the development of new technologies, we just communicate less, therefore it's just so much easier to use technology than to use physical spaces. So why would anyone even bother coming to a store when, even if it's tempting, even if you have a very personal experience there, it's just so much easier. And humans are very, very simple.
Yeah, I still think that the physical space will be important for the experience of buying goods, but it needs to complement the digital space. Mm-hmm. And I agree. They extremely we're living in a mashup world, yeah. Right? And if you think of brands, I was reading yesterday on the newspaper that Ralph Lauren just decided to close their main boutique on the Fifth Avenue to save money and invest them in their digital store, in their online store. And these kind of investments from brand are going to disrupt the way we think at the digital spaces, at the way we do shopping in real life.
Anything to add, Tim? You agree?
Yeah, I think there's no question it's being disrupted. As I said earlier, I think the idea of what we used to think of as a shop that had a physical space distributing a certain number of products, that old way of thinking about it is going away for sure. But I think you need human spaces, social spaces where people connect. And again, transactions have been enabled. You mentioned in fintech in particular, in banks, why do we need branches? I don't think branches will exist in the way they do today. As everyone is moving to transactions on devices, banks no longer need to serve that in a physical place. But there are other services and there are other products that require more human interaction. So depends how much we trust them.
And I agree, but I think this is tightly bonded with the age range of the customer we're trying to serve. For example, the very moment I have to think of physically going to my bank, I would prefer to go to the dentist because I know it's going to be long lines and waits and a lot of time lost for something that I can do in seconds with 2 taps on my smartphone.
Yeah, I think it's ironic. You go to the Ace Hotel in London in Shoreditch, and you have everybody hanging out on the tables and building their next new future business and interacting and trying to meet the right people. What's interesting is those co-working spaces. There are many spaces developing around that interest and that function, but they're not in places where you have capital, and they're not in places where you have financial expertise. Banks actually have that. So I think what you may start to see is that the best places for startups to start to gather and work together and get advice may become what we used to call branches. So I think that's an interesting way of thinking about the future banking.
And maybe my last thought on this question is that at the very end, the reason for the space to exist is to bring people together. And if you look at what we're doing today, we're here all together, and people were here to live a human experience for something they could have easily have consumed in front of their computer. Still, they decided to invest their day and come here. But the difference is that in front of your computer, you just get the content. Here, you feel the energy. So that's the way I think spaces should embrace the digital sphere to enhance the experience.
Oh, that's a great thought. I like how definitely we feel energy by being around humans. So that's definitely the feeling they're missed by just being connected to technology all the time. You mentioned the topic of age. So let's talk about millennials, the favorite topic. Do they have different consumer behavior and habits? And how can brands use that to create better experiences? I recently read an article about millennial pink, and apparently there is such a thing as millennial pink. And it's not any particular shade of pink, it's apparently any type of pink is a millennial pink. But what makes it different that they remove the whole gender issue out of it, so pink is now for boys and for girls, and it creates a completely new community that kind of not gender biased, and again, that creates new conversations. What are your thoughts on millennials? How are you using to create better experiences?
Yeah, millennials, it's a good question. I mean, it's important, I guess, at my age, I've seen a few of these generations come through, so millennials are yet another one. You know, every one of them want and demand to be different, be treated different, and they have aspirations to change things, fix the things that weren't fixed from the previous generations. So I think, you know, it's interesting that there's incredible opportunity that comes along with the millennial ambition when you layer technology on top of that. So to me, it's probably the most exciting generation on one hand. It means there's a lot of great new opportunities, new ways of engaging, new ways of addressing problems. And it's interesting, we're working on a project currently around education, and we're talking about Gen Z. So these are the people who are 10 years old now, who've grown up with technology as you know, like air. You know, it's nothing unique. The millennial generation, it's still kind of a new thing. Gen Z is looking at it and saying, yeah, it's everywhere, so what? I'm really interested in analog. You know, the development of analog gaming now is very big, right? So this, you know, it's interesting to see how that generation is impacting the things we make and the way we interact with people.
Yeah, I think they have a kind of don't bother me tenure, which I relate a lot to. We have been working with telco in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the last couple of years, and what we discovered is that when it comes to support for millennials, it's much more important to have the support of peers than to have the support of the customer care. They do relate, and they put a lot more trust in their own peers, even if they don't know them, even if it's, you know, a conversation happening through an online chat, than having the need to spend time on the phone speaking with a human being that is trying to help them. And this is disrupting the way we do things, right? We have been supporting our customers for ages through you know, real-time human interactions. What is happening now is that the interaction shouldn't even be real-time. What my daughter does, she's not even watching TVs. She's watching shows created by kids of her own age on YouTube, and that's what she enjoys the most. And she's creating those shows too. So they're consuming and creating the content in the same place all together. And if you think about brands, or for example, if you think about luxury, even 5 years, 10 years ago, people our age used to go to the Armani boutique or to the Prada store to brag about the brand, about the brand. Today, the brand has to tell a story, and it has to be a story about the experience, not just about the brand. It's how the product you're buying has been crafted, what's the story, what's the experience behind it, not just what's on the surface, as it was years ago.
But don't you think the whole idea of millennials is a bit overrated? We have so many habits that they say are millennial habits, like spending a lot of time with technology and things like that. We are half millennials ourselves. So is it that important now to actually separate them as a separate kind of group with different habits?
Well, I think they're giving a lot of more things as commoditized. We were, all of us were born when the internet was non-existing. They were born when you go around the town with a piece of technology in your pockets that basically connects you to the entire world. So most of the things that they give for granted are not given for granted from many, many other users. But at the end, I agree. I mean, you can tag them as millennials, they're human beings. And when you put the human being at the center of your design, that's how the magic happens.
Yeah, I think you know, it's kind of a trap to think of people within their demographic category. Yeah, you know, you tend to want to classify people and codify behavior and all of that. I think as long as you're doing that, you're probably focusing on the wrong thing. So, you know, it's an interesting segment to talk about, but I think, you know, you need to start looking at how the people in technology are changing the way we do things. And they happen to be of a certain age. Sometimes they're younger, sometimes they're older. Yeah.
That's great. Let's talk about startups, and I think there are lots of startups in the room. Matteo, your company has a separate branch called Frog Ventures, and Tim, you have a separate incubator arm at Inc. So how does it all work? What kind of startups do you bring in? What are you looking for in new technologies?
So what Frog Venture does is that we invest directly in startups. So we take equity in startups and we help them accelerating their next phase, right? So it could be an early stage startup and we're helping them in kicking off their Kickstarter campaign. And we've run 2 of the most successful campaigns on Kickstarter ever with 2 of our portfolio startups. Or it could be a bigger startup who's trying to get to the B round of funding. And how can we accelerate that? How can we accelerate their success to the market? That's the kind of startup we're looking into. So it's not really, I wouldn't be able to tag them because they're very diverse. They're coming from healthcare, from kids technology, 3D printing, software, hardware, and at many different stages. We're looking for startups where Frog as an organization is capable of accelerating their success. That's the startup we're looking for.
And what do you take in exchange for your services and helping them to grow?
So, again, it varies. It's usually equity, but we also, in some cases, want to participate to the commercial success of the startup. So we might take portion of their revenues. We got our first exit a couple of months ago with Liquid Palo being exited to Verizon. But at the end, what we do is bring design and humans, user-centered design to the startup world, which is kind of new to this. And also bringing these processes we develop in working with startups, so accelerating their go-to-market phase or their product success to large-scale organization with what we call venture design. And embed these teams coming from big corporations within the startups we invest in and within the Frog teams.
Tim, what about your?
Yeah, our structure is maybe similar in some ways, but we started by identifying what we found as particularly complex and difficult problems and started to develop solutions against those and brought them up to a point to where we would prove the concept, and then from there it would spin out and become a startup company. We would retain equity in that, but we would also then bring in partners and commercialize that. So we have a pipeline of that we've been working on, and we have a number of startups that have been launched in that. As we've been going through that process, many groups who have incubated a number of projects will come to us and ask us to look at their startups and identify ones that we'd like to bring into our program. And so that's also been growing. So we've been able to attract both new startup concepts as well as investors who want to maybe de-risk their investment and make sure that the types of things we take on have that kind of professionally accelerated quality to them.
Last question for today regarding the startups. Again, people came here to obviously get some advice, mentorship, and understand how they can build their businesses. So both of you are very involved with startups, and Matteo, you have your own ones, and your team obviously built your own company and led it to the success. So what advice can you give to people sitting here? Maybe what mistakes startups make at the beginning, or what they should focus on right now, especially at the very important early stage when you're trying to build something great? What would you tell people?
You know, I think it's when you're starting a company in particular, you need to look at what you're doing, make sure that you really love it. You may have an idea, but recognize that you're going to be married to that idea for a very long time. It's a lot of hard work regardless of the idea. So it has to be something that you love to do. If it's not something you love to do, then it's going to become work. And it may or may not succeed, but it's something that will require more energy than you probably estimate to begin with. And I think, you know, find something you really love and plan to put a lot of time into it.
Well, first, have no fear. Second thing, don't look for money, look for your users. Third thing, hire a chief design officer tomorrow morning or today.
Very good advice. Thanks a lot, guys. It was fantastic having you here. And I'm sure you will be around. So, guys, if you have more questions, find Tim and Matteo somewhere in the audience. And thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ciao.